Walaikum salam, Brother Kenny. Brother Winston, walaikum salam. Walaikum salam, Brother Daniel. Peace, brother. Walaikum salam. Walaikum salam, Brother Craig, Brother Walter. Walaikum salam. Walaikum salam. Walaikum salam. Brother Winford. Peace, God. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us, family. We just want to take a few more minutes to let our family add on. Peace to the God, J Electronica. Peace, God. The war between the lion and the bull absolutely continues, God. True indeed. Shout out to the God, J Electronica. Oh, praise belongs to Allah. Yo, I saw a clip of you, I think today or yesterday. You looking good, God. You shining. Brother Floyd, man, I'm so ready to offer it, inshallah. So a few more minutes and we're going to get started. Peace, Brother Robert. Asani. Wa alaikum salam. Wa alaikum salam. Wa alaikum salam. Brother Eric, the new book, Allah, the Original Man. Yes, they're shipping. We got a tremendous response, a tremendous amount of orders of prints. They're being printed. They're going out. And so yours is on its way. It's a little slower just because we got such a tremendous response. There's so many books to print and get out. So, but they're on their way. If you ordered Allah the Original Man, you should have yours shortly. Brother Daryl, peace, God. Wa alaikum salam. Brother Daryl, I agree with you. This day, July 4th, is a great, great day in the history of the Black man and woman of America and indeed the world. And so on that note, we will begin. Bishmi Allah. Assalamu alaikum, family. Happy Founders Day. Happy Savior's Day. Indeed, happy Independence Day. We Black people, we can say that. July 4th is a day that all Black people should honor and even celebrate. It is indeed a holy day, as white people celebrate this day, but we don't celebrate it at their celebrations because we don't celebrate this day for the same reason that they do. Same day, different cause. All Black people should honor and celebrate July 4th, the 4th of July. For 95 years ago today, on July 4th, 1930, Allah in the person of Master Fard Muhammad made his presence known to the people of Black Bottom, Detroit. He didn't make his true identity known to the people, for that was left for his chief student to do, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. In the midst of white Americans celebrating their independence from Britain, the Savior's presence in Black Bottom declared Black people's independence from our 400-year-old slave master. Master Fard Muhammad, his presence also marked the end of the 66 trillion year mystery of God. Let's go to the God. And as I'm preparing this, shout out to my brother, Warren A. Muhammad, who I could not do any of these presentations like this without his assistance. He's a really great helper and brother of mine. I hope you all can see the screen. Let's see. Okay. I see. Let me go back. No, 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 no. Master Fard Muhammad's presence in Black Bottom, Detroit, marked the end of the 66 trillion year old mystery of God. The Black man and woman in America are the first people in history to be made independent of this mystery. For the Savior declared to us that Allah is not a spook, but is the original people, the Black man of Asia, the Asiatic Black man. July 4th, 1930 marked the beginning of the ultimate divine self-revelation. On July 4th, 1947, 17 years to the day that the first divine self-revelation in a ghetto of Detroit, Michigan, there was another divine self-revelation in the desert of Roswell, New Mexico. The Roswell incident was not, as popularly thought, the accidental crash of an extraterrestrial UFO. It was a deliberate divine gifting by Allah, God's presenting his calling card to his enemy. So this day, July 4th, has such great significance for Black people in America, because at least two very important because at least two very important events occurred on the 4th of July relevant to the future of Black people in America. The first, the divine self-revelation of Allah, Master Fard Muhammad, in Black Bottom, a ghetto of Detroit, Michigan, on July 4th, 1930. The second, July 4th, 1942, a second divine self-revelation occurred in the desert of Roswell, New Mexico. The so-called Roswell incident is a very important event to study. It's a very exciting historical incident to study. But the truth of Roswell is obscured, it's covered, it's clouded with a lot of myth. And a lot of the myth emanates not from public gullibility. A lot of the obscuring myth is the direct result of government disinformation. We will get to that in a moment, Allah willing. Now, Brother Warren, I would like to see, and I don't know how, if I can, on my screen, or no, don't worry about it. We'll proceed as is. As stated, the Roswell incident was not, as popularly thought, the accidental crash of an extraterrestrial UFO. It was a deliberate divine gifting by Allah, God's presenting his calling card to his enemy. Master Fard Muhammad is the architect and the captain of that object which the March 20, 23rd Pentagon draft report described as a mothership that releases smaller probes, UFOs, into Earth's atmosphere. The Pentagon was writing about the wheel and the baby planes as taught to us in the world by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the man who appeared, who made his presence known in Black Bottom, Detroit on July 4th, 1930. This man, Master Fard Muhammad, he is the architect and the captain of this ship, this mothership, in the language of the Pentagon. He is the captain and the architect of this great craft. Now, a calling card is a device used to introduce oneself to someone in lieu of a formal in-person visit. In criminology, a calling card is a particular object deliberately left at the scene of a crime in order to both claim responsibility and to taunt the authorities. On July 4th, 1947, Allah in the person of Master Fard Muhammad left his calling card in Roswell, New Mexico. He gifted his enemy a baby plane and its pilots to study. America came face to face with the black gods of Asia on that day. But none of the popular narrative around the Roswell incident gives any hint of these facts. Thus, this episode of Opening the Files is titled Roswell's Last Secret, revealing truth and exposing the myths. The popular narrative of the Roswell incident is a bunch of mythology that conceals a great and profound truth. This is the subject of our discussion this evening. But before we dive into a revelation that occurred 78 years ago, I want to start with a government disclosure that occurred last month, June 2025. This particular government disclosure, in fact, supplies significant context to what we're going to present this evening regarding the Roswell incident, in particular, Roswell myths. Now, to further contextualize, the government disclosure from last month, June 2025, I want to draw our attention, if I may, to something I disclosed in the book I wrote and published in February 2024. My book, Chariots of the Black Gods, the UFO reality, and the alien hoax. In this book from 2024, I thoroughly document that the current extraterrestrial hypothesis of the UFO phenomenon the claim that flying saucers carry aliens from different planets. This extraterrestrial hypothesis is largely the fruit of a disinformation campaign of the US government, the CIA, and the US Air Force in particular, that began in the 1950s. This governmental disinformation campaign began in the 1950s. And its aim was twofold. It proceeded along two tracks. On one track, the aim of the disinformation campaign of the US government is to propagate the belief that UFOs or these craft are not real, that any sighting of them can be explained away by a natural occurrence. So debunking was the first track that this governmental disinformation campaign took. The second track that it took was to not debunk the craft, their reality, but to make the public believe, those who were committed to belief in them, make them believe that these craft originated off planet, on a different planet, and are flown by aliens of various types. By 1947, the government knew that the UFOs were real and were piloted by Black humans. And by 1950, the government wanted the public to believe it was green reptilians flying the craft. The reptilian, Greys, Nordics narrative of UFOs have been carefully guided by the government. I am not aware, family, of any other ufologist today, other than myself, who is proclaiming and documenting that the alien interpretation of the UFO is purely a government-directed hoax. Now, an explosive investigation by the Wall Street Journal, published last month, has validated this basic claim that I first document in this book, Chariots of the Black Gods, in 2024. This explosive investigation by the Wall Street Journal, entitled "The Pentagon Disinformation That Fueled America's UFO Mythology," based on a 2024 Department of Defense analysis led by ARRO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. This Wall Street Journal investigation found that for decades, the Pentagon deliberately fueled popular alien conspiracy theories and actually spawned a number of foundational UFO myths. Even Sean Kirkpatrick, ARRO's first director, confessed that many popular alien conspiracy theories can be traced to disinformation efforts initiated by the Pentagon in 1980 in, quote, what amounted to the U.S. government targeting its own citizens with disinformation. The U.S. government targeted its own citizens with disinformation, fueling UFO mythology, spawning alien conspiracy theories. The U.S. government did this. This Wall Street Journal article found that the evidence is emerging that the government efforts to propagate this UFO mythology date back all the way to the 1950s, which of course is what I documented in our book, that in 1950, after the 1947 divine self-revelatory event in Roswell, New Mexico, in 1950, the U.S. government began the first phase of its disinformation campaign. According to this important Wall Street Journal investigative report, the Pentagon was found to have, one, fabricated UFO and alien narratives and spread them. Two, doctored UFO photos and planted them in local communities. Three, the Pentagon was found to have spread false documents. Many of the documents floating around on the internet, Project Aquarius and others, many of the MJ-12 documents. These are government fabricated documents that fed alien conspiracy theories, fed the alien narrative or the extraterrestrial hypothesis of UFOs. The report revealed that alien myths were intentionally stoked to mislead the public and foreign adversaries. The Pentagon was found to, 5, the Pentagon allowed alien myths to take root, quote, in the interests of national security. So the U.S. government, in particular, the Pentagon, in conjunction with Langley, with the CIA, determined that it was in this country's national interest to spread false alien conspiracy narratives. The Pentagon even staged fake briefings, Pentagon briefings, with Air Force commanders and military personnel about a classified alien investigation program called Yankee Blue, which studied extraterrestrial craft in U.S. possession. The whole time, Yankee Blue was fictional, but military commanders and personnel were given what they believed were official briefings on Yankee Blue. They left those briefings believing that there is alien extraterrestrials and their technology in U.S. possession. By this means, false alien conspiracy theories were spread in the halls of the Pentagon itself. According to this Wall Street Journal report, the Pentagon's purpose in spreading fake alien stories was to camouflage top research and protect classified weapons programs. This disinformation effort was thus in part a CCND operation. CCND, camouflage, concealment, and deception, is a military tactic used to disguise military forces and equipment by, among other techniques, creating false impressions. The false impression that this governmental disinformation campaign created is the false impression that these spectacularly technologically advanced craft that's flying around not just America's skies, but the world's skies with impunity, that can violate restricted military space with impunity. The false impression that this operation gives the public is the impression that this technology is extraterrestrial or alien technology. But the truth of the matter is, as revealed to the world through the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, the truth of the matter is these craft are real. They are not terrestrial in the sense that they originated with any terrestrial government or world power on the earth today. No, they are very non-terrestrial in that sense, but they are not extraterrestrial. They don't originate off planet. In ufology, the study of UFOs, it has introduced two terms which is not the language of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, but in terms of ufology, I think these two terms get closer to the truth of this phenomenon as articulated by the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. The two terms that ufology kicks around are supra-terrestrial and crypto-terrestrial. Supra-terrestrial in the sense that this technology is above all earthly technology. This does not imply that this technology originated off planet, but it suggests that this technology is above anything that is conventional on the planet today. Crypto technology, this supra-terrestrial or crypto-terrestrial, suggests crypto hidden, that this technology that is so far above anything that this world's nations and scientists could produce. This supra-terrestrial technology originated by technologically advanced communities of people hidden. They're on the earth, but they're hidden from regular society. And that is very close to the truth. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us the origin of this technology, of the mother wheel, the great wheel, and the 1,500 smaller wheels or baby planes. They originated on this planet, but no society, no government is responsible for this technology, for these craft. There are communities, family, that exist on this planet, that originate on this planet. Communities of gods that have been sequestered in hidden areas on this planet. So governments of this world can't detect them unless they want to be detected. This is the context of the technology evident in the so-called UFO phenomenon. So the creators of these craft, they're on planet, they're not off planet. And the US government came face to face with the reality of the people responsible for this technology in 1947. And then beginning in 1950, the government has been going out of its way officially to conceal the truth of the culture behind this technology. And so they have advanced the narrative that UFOs originate from galaxies far, far beyond, from non-human intelligences that are very different from anything human. So the aim of this disinformation campaign by the Pentagon that the Wall Street Journal has nicely exposed. One aim is to camouflage classified weapons systems, but the other aim is to conceal the true identity of the beings behind this phenomenon, and a true identity that the U.S. government came face to face with in 1947. So that's the preamble, if you will, or the introduction to what we will share regarding Roswell. This June 2025 report by the Wall Street Journal nicely lays out that the government, the U.S. government, has been deliberately lying to the public, but lying in a way to make the public believe in aliens. The U.S. government is invested in popularizing the alien narrative, making the general public believe in little green men, little gray men, and tall, white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed men are responsible for this phenomenon. That is government disinformation, family. I documented that and put that out in my 2024 book, in the Wall Street Journal, in a 2025 investigative report, confirmed that fact. So Roswell. There's two myths of Roswell I would like to disabuse us of. I will start with this myth and then go into the truth, some truth of Roswell, and then expose another myth. Myth number one, the claim that ufology begins with Roswell. In most UFO literature, the grandfather event of ufology is the Roswell incident of July 1947. And most times they don't give the accurate date. The accurate date is July 4th, not July 2nd. I'll get to that in a minute. But most literature has a consensus that ufology in America in the modern period begins in Roswell in 1947, that is the event. But some will shift to the Kenneth Arnold sightings of that same year in June of 1947. But the Kenneth Arnold sightings of June 1947 and the Roswell incident of July 1947, this is said to be the beginning of ufology in America. And that is simply wrong. Before I unpack that, what I'm presenting tonight on Roswell, it originated as a report made public and is still available. The report is also a chapter in my book, Chariots of the Black Gods. In the book, which is 500 pages, gives a full context of the Roswell incident and other incidents demonstrating the UFO reality and the alien hoax, and in particular, the true pilots of these craft. The book is available at our website, www.drwesley.info. You can get the full book, or you can still order the report if you want to go right to Roswell. You can order the report tonight, and it will be a PDF copy will be emailed to you. So if your interest is specific to Roswell tonight, what we will share this evening is documented in our report, Roswell's Last Secret. The pilots were not pale gray aliens, but divine black Asiatics. The report can be ordered via Cash App at Dr. Wesley. You can send $10, but make sure you include your email so the PDF can be sent to you. Before there was the Roswell incident of July 4th, 1947, there was a so-called Battle of LA in February 25, 1942. In terms of America, this can be considered the grandfather event for ufology. The momentous incident in which the mother plane and a fleet of her baby planes triggered an intense military reaction on February 25th of 1942, while America was threatening Japan. The wheel and the baby planes introduced themselves to President Franklin Roosevelt in Los Angeles. The wheel and baby planes cruised along the coast of California, taking rounds and rounds of artillery, U.S. artillery, and being totally unmoved by the heavy artillery. On that day, February 25th, 1942, Allah, in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, introduced the wheel and his fleet formally to President Roosevelt. So 1947, should not be considered the beginning of ufology in America. Before 1947, there was 1942. This was a grand so-called UFO event, which again we document in our book. Secondly, now, after this event, the so-called Battle of LA, it's misnomered battle because it wasn't a fight. If it was a fight, this country would have been destroyed. The wheel and its fleet of baby planes that appeared on that night, they deliberately triggered the military response from the U.S. and didn't fire back at all. The point was to show the U.S. that nothing that it has can hurt the most powerful military weapon that has ever been produced in the annals of history. The wheel received America's best and was unflinched. The wheel did not return fire at the U.S., so it wasn't really a battle, it was a divine demonstration. Now, that was February 1942. In May 1942, the U.S. government arrested the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, got him off the streets while America was prosecuting a war. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was released from custody in July and then rearrested by the FBI in September. During the arrest, the FBI questioned the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in particular about the mother wheel and the baby planes that the U.S. government just was confronted by in February. And during this interview by the FBI, the U.S. government learned the truth of what they encountered in February. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told them the origin of this craft, the author of this craft, and who's flying the craft. So by September 1942, the U.S. government had physically encountered the wheel and the baby planes and learned that they aren't flown by gray aliens or any aliens. They learned that they are piloted by Asiatic black men from Earth. The government had that knowledge by September 1942, but it was intellectual at that point in 1942. Any doubt regarding what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told the FBI, the doubt will be dismissed in 1947. But before we get to that, the other reason why 1947 must be put in this larger context is because 1947 wasn't even the first time Allah gifted or laid his calling card down. It was the first time in America, but the Americans weren't the first to receive Allah's calling card. Before the Roswell recovery of July 1947, there was the Magenta, Italy recovery of June 1933. The Italian Führer, if you will, El Duce, Benito Mussolini, took possession of a so-called UFO that landed in the small town in Magenta in Italy. The Vatican, in particular, Pope Pius XII, was made aware. And eventually, Adolf Hitler, the Führer of Germany, was made aware. In Italy and Germany worked together in studying this first craft that was gifted to the enemy. Now, 2 weeks ago, we document this first recovery, 1933 recovery, in our book, Chariots of the Black Gods. Two weeks ago, News Nation interviewed Pentagon whistleblower David Grush. David Grush, a former top national reconnaissance office staffer, has been among those revealing that this 30-foot long flying saucer landed near Magenta, Lombardy in northern Italy in June 1933, and that the Pope was aware of it, and that the Pope informed the Americans, and the Americans, after winning the war, of World War II, took possession of this craft. Listen to this news piece that appeared on News Nation 2 weeks ago.
The hunt for proof of alien life in the Vatican files picked up steam in 2023 when a former U.S. intelligence official named David Grush told Congress that the Vatican had been involved in a cover-up. David Grush later provided more details to News Nation's Ross Coulthart, and here is some of their conversation.
So let's start from the very beginning. You say it's a 90-year cover-up.
Just about, yeah.
90 years.
1933 was the first recovery in Europe, in Magenta, Italy. They recovered a partially intact vehicle.
It's long been known that the regime of dictator Benito Mussolini documented numerous UAP during this time. This internal memo from the Italian secret services includes crude drawings of the UAPs.
It's true. It's real. Yeah, that actually happened. The Italian government moved it to a secure air base in Italy for the rest of kind of the fascist regime until 1944, 1945. And, the Pope Pius XII back-channeled that.
So the Vatican was involved.
Yeah, and told the Americans what the Italians had, and we ended up scooping it.
So let me be very clear about this. You're saying that the Catholic Church, the Vatican, they know about the existence of non-human intelligence on this planet.
Certainly.
So, I'm not going to go deep into the 1933 recovery, as I'm not going deep into the 1942 battle, so-called Battle of Los Angeles. But I cite these two incidents to make the point that ufology precedes Roswell. Roswell is a very important event, ufological event, but it is not the beginning. It is not the grandfather event. When we say that, we disrespect that tremendous event of February 1942. And so much of what happened here in America post World War II can't be understood and without knowledge and an understanding of the June 1933 Magenta, Italy recovery in particular, the whole Manhattan Project and the building of the atomic bomb is in America. It's one of the fruits of the study of the Magenta, Italy, so-called UFO, that Allah gifted to the enemy. And we documented that. We did a whole discussion and presentation on Oppenheimer. In fact, we published a report in 2023 with the release of the movie Oppenheimer. We published our report, Oppenheimer, the Atomic Bomb, and the Mother Wheel, the real story behind the movie. And so, to understand the Manhattan Project, to understand Hiroshima and Nagasaki, to properly understand it, we have to understand what happened in Magenta, Italy, June 1933, and what came of that. So these are two precedent events to Roswell. So Roswell is not the beginning of ufology, but indeed the Roswell incident is very important and very important for Black people to know about and to understand. And so on that, the truth of Roswell. What is the truth of Roswell? Well, let's start like this. It's not a weather balloon that crashed in Roswell, New Mexico. Wasn't a Project Mogul secret reconnaissance weather balloon, as is the official position of the U.S. government today. In this important picture, very famous in Roswell literature and lore, you have kneeling down Brigadier General Roger Ramey on the left. And next to him, sitting in the chair, now Brigadier General Ramey was in 1947 the commanding general of the 8th Air Force. With him sitting on the chair in this picture is Colonel Thomas J. Du Bois, the 8th Air Force Chief of Staff. This picture was taken in Ramey's office at the Fort Worth Army Airfield. They are kneeling over weather balloon debris. And this picture went out to convince the world that the Roswell incident was nothing other than a fallen weather balloon. Now, what's important is that this man right here, Colonel Thomas Du Bois, the one sitting on the chair, the 8th Air Force Chief of Staff, he has gone on record stating that that was a lie. It was a cover-up. In an affidavit that he signed in 1991. He reveals, quote, the material shown in the photographs taken in Major General Ramey's office was a weather balloon. It was not the debris from Roswell. He said the weather balloon explanation for the material was a cover story to divert the attention of the press. So I start there because I don't want the viewers to take this journey with me, all the while having in the back of your mind that all of my points are moot because Roswell was about nothing but a weather balloon. Roswell has been officially dismissed as having to do with nothing other than a weather balloon. But the government personnel involved in spreading that lie has gone on record and said, indeed, it was a lie. Roswell was not about a weather balloon. Roswell was about Allah's calling card. Now, let me address this conceptual issue. Some have said, if you Muslims say what crashed in Roswell was a baby plane, how do you account for that? You all say that this wheel and its baby planes represent a technology, a military weapon unparalleled in the history of military weapons, that its technology is undefeatable. How then can it just crash in the desert? Well, your point is well taken. Baby planes don't just crash in the desert unless they intended to crash in the desert. Where do you think the Japanese kamikaze tradition originated, family? Understand, remember that the wheel and its baby planes were built in Japan, secretly built on the island of Nippon, Japan. So where do you think the Japanese kamikaze tradition originated? Here we have a kamikaze aircraft crashing into a U.S. warship in May 1945. The Japanese word kamikaze means divine wind and is short for Divine Wind Special Attack Unit of the Imperial Japanese Air Force. In World War II, kamikaze missions against vehicles of the Allies, Japanese aircraft became pilot-guided explosive missiles. Over 3,800 kamikaze pilots sacrificed themselves for the cause. The pilots of the baby planes fly for a war cause much greater even than that of Imperial Japan in World War II. These kamikaze pilots that hurled themselves in their airplanes at enemy vehicles and installations. They weren't crashing. They were giving themselves up for the war cause. the baby planes and their pilots that gave themselves up to the enemy to have to study so that the enemy will be disabused of any doubt that they may have entertained regarding what they learned from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad in 1942. What the Honorable Elijah Muhammad described of the pilots of these craft in 1942, the U.S. government came face to face with in 1947 because Allah delivered to the enemy the specimen to study. He introduced himself on another level in 1947 through those subordinate to him who carry out his Allah in the person of Master Fard Muhammad. The pilots of these craft carry out his will, execute his will. Like the kamikaze pilots executed the will of the government of Imperial Japan. The pilots of the baby planes execute the will of their superior officer, their commander-in-chief, Allah in the person of Master Fard Muhammad. So that's what happened in Roswell, New Mexico in July 1947. Radar technology didn't interfere with the operating system of this baby plane, causing it to accidentally crash. No, that's a lie. This baby plane and its pilots offered themselves to the enemy. Why, Brother Wesley, would Allah do that? Why would Allah allow his enemy a peek into this supreme technology? The enemy could study it. And you say, Brother Dr. Wesley, that the enemy studied the 1933 vehicle. And from that study, they were able to split the atom and develop the atomic bomb. Why would Allah give such a gift of knowledge to his enemy that he has declared he will destroy? This question was answered by the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan in episode 52 of The Time and What Must Be Done. Episode 52 is entitled The Will, Allah God's Calling Card. Here, the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan is quoting the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he reveals to us the holy, or you may go to the bottom of the sea. And the enemy, is doing that today because Allah allows them. The minister says, the Holy Quran, quoting the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Holy Quran further says that whenever God gets ready to destroy a people, he opens up the heavens for them and gives them the pleasure of what they seek or lust after. And then he destroys them. The Holy Quran further prophesies that the heavens would be open to this people and the veil of every secret would be removed. This prophecy does not mean that the enemy will, after that, be able to win against the God in a battle between them and God. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us from God that God would allow, he will remove the veil of every secret and allow the enemy a peek into the heavens. He will give them a peek, reveal to the enemy secrets, just enough of the secret to make the enemy think he has become advanced enough to challenge God. Allah will give the enemy and has given the enemy enough of the secrets to embolden the enemy and make the enemy want to fight God, thinking he can fight God and win, but he cannot. The Roswell incident is one example of Allah removing a veil from a secret for the enemy. Why Roswell, New Mexico? Why did this important moment of divine self-revelation, why did it happen in Roswell, New Mexico? Of course, we can ask the same question. Why was the first calling card dropped in Magenta, Italy? That's not my subject tonight. Why was this American incident of divine self-revelation, why did it occur in Roswell, New Mexico, of all places? Well, it was not an arbitrary choice or location. That location clearly was very definitely chosen for very understandable, at least from my perspective, earthly perspective, very understandable reasons. The Roswell Army Airfield, pictured here, had at that time in 1947 a great distinction, the distinction of being the home of the 509th Bombardment Group or Bomb Group. Here you see the 509th Bomb Group on the right before one of their bomber planes, and I hope you can see the name of the bomber plane that this 509th group, bomb group, flew. Is called Lucifer Jr. What is the 509th Bomb Group that in 1947 was stationed at Roswell Army Airfield? The 509th was created during World War II as the United States Army Air Force unit tasked with the operational deployment of nuclear weapons. The 509th conducted the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. This is the group, the unit that bombed Nagasaki and Hiroshima. This is the group, Lucifer Jr. and the boys, who dropped the atomic bombs on Japan. You see the logo of the 509th unit. You see in the middle of the logo is an atomic mushroom cloud burst. This mushroom cloud represents that the 509th was the only unit to ever drop atomic bombs in wartime. Another iteration, seeing clearer. You see, under the mushroom cloud, there's the atomic structure, an atom, with the red lightning bolts. The red lightning bolts represent the power and nature of the atomic weapons and the unit's role, the 509th's role in deploying them. So the 509th, that was the only unit in the world to ever drop a nuclear bomb in wartime. The 509th, the very unit that dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The 509th, whose logo is the very atomic mushroom cloud coming out of an atom. This unit was stationed at Roswell in 1947. I'm sure this has a lot to do with why Allah's calling card was left in Roswell, New Mexico, because everyone handling the material from the baby plane and the pilots, they were 509 boys. They were Roswell Army Airfield personnel. Lucifer Jr. is the name of the bomber plane that the 509th boys are standing in front of. So it makes good sense to me why Allah would have chosen Roswell among all the places in the U.S., why Allah would have chosen Roswell, New Mexico, the home of Lucifer Jr. and the 509th Bomb Squad, to be the recipient of his calling card. And again, everyone who has read either my book or the first report I put out on Oppenheimer, the atomic bomb, and the mother wheel, and the report can be sent to you. It's available as a PDF through Cash App as well. Those who have read the report or the book understand the significance of America's atomic bomb development. The Manhattan Project was the fruit of Allah giving the enemy a calling card in Italy in 1933. They studied that craft, studied the nuclear and atomic properties of that craft, and from that study, they were able in Germany to split the atom. They were able, through the Manhattan Project, to develop the atomic bomb. That this group, Lucifer Jr. and the 509 bomb group, dropped on Japan after they had learned from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad that wheel that they were confronted with in February 1942, it originated on the island of Japan. All of these are connected. So yes, it makes eminent sense to me why Allah dropped his calling card in Roswell, New Mexico, when he could have dropped it any place in this country. This is the report that I detail how America acquired her atomic bomb knowledge. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, he told no lie when he said these words, quote, "The atomic bomb is a terrible revelation of divine power." Indeed it is. Because the atom, when they were able to split the atom, they were able to access divine fire. But Allah gave them that. Allah gave them that fire to play with. Now, the 4th of July. Was it really the 4th of July, Brother Wesley? Roswell. The Roswell incident was a divine explosion on the 4th of July. In the weeks following Kenneth Arnold's sighting of so-called flying saucers on June 24th, 1947, quote, reading from Michael Heisman and Philip Mantle's important book, Beyond Roswell, they inform us that in the weeks following Kenneth Arnold's sighting, quote, the U.S. was plagued by a downright epidemic of flying saucer hysteria. Suddenly, they were everywhere. Reports of sightings came in from all over the country. UFO researcher Ted Blocher was able to collect over 850 announcements from the national press. The number of sightings reached a peak on, of all days, July 4th, 1947. And something very particular happened on July 4th, 1947. Sometime between 11 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. on that Friday evening, July 4th, a number of witnesses, including the Franciscan Catholic nuns who served as nurses at St. Mary's Hospital in Roswell, saw, quote, a flaming object that came down in a curve north of Roswell. This is at between 11 and 11:30 Friday evening, July 4th. The nurses saw this flaming object come down in a curve north of Roswell. According to another report, around 11:20 p.m., therefore agreeing with the Franciscan nurses, at around 11:20 p.m. on the night of July 4th, 1947, radar picked up an object that pulsated and then blossomed into a sunburst and disappeared, indicating an explosion. At the same time, 70 miles northwest of Roswell, a sheep rancher named William Mac Brazel, who served as the foreman of a ranch owned by J.B. Foster, he heard a loud explosion. The next day, July 5th, Brazel rode out to the ranch and found a debris field of metallic parts and pieces, 3/4 of a mile long and 200 miles wide. The spread of the debris made Mac Brazel certain that the debris came from an airborne explosion. Major Jesse A. Marcel, the intelligence corps officer attached to the 509th Bomb Group, based in Roswell, and Jesse Marcel, the first, or Major Jesse Marcel, the first major military officer tasked with investigating the Roswell incident, he said that the debris field was all, quote, this is Major Jesse Marcel. He said that the debris field was all evenly spread out, as if something had exploded in the air and fallen down on the ground. What impressed me, Major Marcel said, what impressed me was that one could clearly see which direction it came from and where it was going. It flew from the northeast to southwest. One could see where it began and also where it ended. Now, a brother asked me for clarification on the date. Brother Dr. Wesley, you keep saying the Roswell incident, the explosion happened on July 4th. Multiple people have hit me with, are you sure that's true? And the reason there's some incredulity with the date is because in most of the literature, the popular literature, that date isn't emphasized. But indeed, July 4th is the date. A brother cited, for example, Timothy Good's book, Need to Know, as evidence that the date wasn't on July 4th, it was on July 2nd. And this is his source for that date. But a dear brother just did not read the source carefully. So we would do so now. Timothy Good in this source does not at all contradict the fact that the true date is July 4th. What he says in this work that a brother brought suggested contradicted what we're saying. Timothy Good says, quote, on the evening of July 2nd, 1947, several witnesses observed a fast-moving saucer-shaped object heading northwest over the town of Roswell, New Mexico. One of the witnesses, Dan Wilmot, decided to report it to the local newspaper on July 8th, only minutes before the intelligence office at Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release stating that they had come into possession of a flying disc, making headline news on that day. Thus began the Roswell incident. Now let's stop here. This is the first part of the quote, and then we'll get to the second part. But please note, Timothy Good is not describing or placing the Roswell incident on July 2nd. He is reciting what those of us who know this history know, that while in June, since Kenneth Arnold's sighting on June 24th, 1947, from that sighting through June, the rest of June, and the early part of July, there were multiple sightings. Now on July 7th, a so-called UFO was visible and reported by witnesses on July 7th, flying around. July 2nd, flying around. But the witnesses don't say that the crash or explosion or the incident happened on July 2nd. Neither is Timothy Good saying that here, but on July 7th, July 2nd, 1947, several witnesses reported seeing the craft, which it is believed ended up on the ground in Roswell. And so Timothy Good continues his discussion. After citing the July 2nd, 1947 sightings of a UFO by witnesses, he goes on to say, approximately the same time as the Roswell sightings, an unusual aerial vehicle crashed during a violent storm on the J.B. Foster Ranch, southeast of Corona and about 75 miles northwest of Roswell. Early the next morning, ranch manager William Mac Brazel discovered a large amount of unusual debris scattered over a wide area. So this is what happened. On July 2nd, a UFO made, so-called UFO, so-called flying saucer, made its presence known in the Roswell area. It's flying around Roswell, and several witnesses take note of it on July 2nd. It does not fall to the ground on July 2nd. That's not what's being reported. What's being reported is witnesses take note of it on July 2nd. Then approximately the same time as the Roswell sightings, so approximately means 2 days later. On July 4th, 1947, at around sometime between 11 and 11:30 p.m. on July 4th, is when the explosion happens. And the deliberate explosion happens. The gods know how to explode their craft. The explosion happened Friday night, July 4th. The next day, Saturday morning, is when Mac Brazel found the debris in the field that he was managing. So yes, July 4th is the day of the explosion. Not July 2nd. July 2nd was when that particular baby plane was making itself known in the Roswell area, presented itself to witnesses around the area. Then on July 4th is when the gods did what they did. Now, there were 2 crash sites. So it appears that at the first crash, the first site where Mac Brazel found the debris, that site was 75 miles northwest of Roswell. This is the debris field that Brazel found. The explosion, aerial in air explosion, occurred in this area. But apparently the whole vehicle did not disintegrate. The debris field that Brazel found on his ranch did not represent all of the baby plane or the craft. The explosion littered, if you will, the ground with debris that did not constitute the entirety of the craft, apparently. The rest of the craft proceeded on and landed at the second crash site, 40 miles north of Roswell. At this second crash site was the ship and the bodies of the pilots. Now, Mac Brazel, while he found the debris field, there was no intact craft and no bodies at the debris field that Mac Brazel encountered. The intact craft and the bodies were 35 miles away from him, but Mac Brazel would travel to the second crash site and witness the craft itself and the bodies. We'll get to that in a minute. Here is a depiction of Mac Brazel at the debris field, and with him, Major Jesse Marcel. You see the silvery material, debris spread out on the land. Now, this is an actual photo of Mac Brazel. So I was asked, do we have the transcript of the FBI's, of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's conversation with the FBI in 1942? We do have that. What we have is the statement in the FBI files on the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The September 1942 interrogation that resulted in a statement that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave to the FBI discussing the mother will. That statement is in the FBI file, and we do have that. So we know what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said in his statement to the FBI. But let's get back to the debris. From crash site 1, the Mac Brazel craft site, the debris field. The debris that he encountered is very important. The metal debris from the 1947 Roswell explosion had unique characteristics. Most of it was like aluminum foil, but it was weightless. Nevertheless, it could not be burned, it could not be torn, it could not be broken or bent, even with a sledgehammer. The material was very flexible, but no matter how often it was crumbled, the material always regained its original shape. Some of the material also had some sort of inscriptions on it, variously described as hieroglyphics, as Chinese writing, and as Japanese pictures. So the debris from this craft, the debris was silvery. It was aluminum foil-like on one side, and it was gray rubber-like on the other side. It was weightless, but it was indestructible. It couldn't be burned with fire. It couldn't be torn, and it couldn't be dented with a sledgehammer. It could wrinkle, but it would not crease. You can fold it, but it will always return to its original shape. It had Japanese-like and Egyptian-like hieroglyphics on it. But there's an even more important unique characteristic of this material, this debris material. And that is that it was like fabric. Several witnesses tell us that the material, it was aluminum foil-like, but it was fabric-like. It was like cloth, that the UFO metal was like aluminized cloth. We have, for example, the testimony of Captain Robert McLaughlin, chief of the Naval Rocket Unit at White Sands Proving Ground during the 1940s. Here's Captain Robert McLaughlin here. In 1947, he was given some of this material from the Roswell debris. He was given this material by an Army major from Roswell with the request to have the metallurgical technicians, the metal people, technicians, drill a hole in the material. Captain McLaughlin later told his son John that the metal was, quote, a metal-like cloth or fabric with a peculiar drape, that it was yet a strong and impenetrable material. Captain McLaughlin reports that in a White Sands workshop, technicians tried repeatedly to drill a hole in the material with an advanced carbide drill, but couldn't even make a scratch. Now, this is very important to me, and it forces an idea on me. This material that the so-called UFO is made of, the metal, is like cloth. It's metal-like cloth or aluminized cloth that can fold to any contour, yet it is impenetrable. This raises the question to me. The silver metal of the craft is the same material as the silver bodysuits that the so-called UFO occupants or pilots are noted to have worn. Now, what forces this idea on me? Let me break it down. Why I believe, and it is my belief that I am putting out there. It's my theory, but these are the reasons why I believe the material of the craft, the silver material of the craft, the UFO metal, is the same material that the pilot suits are made of. Why do I say that? Other than the fact that the UFO metal is fabric. It's like aluminized cloth that operates, it acts like cloth. Well, the reason, so this is my thinking, bear with me. I'm sure you all know that the government, while it is confessing the reality of these UFOs. Note now all of the congressional hearings of late, but the government does not use the language UFO. The new language that the government uses for these craft is UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena, not aerial. There's a reason the government does not use aerial. RO, the government body tasked with studying UFOs, RO is called the all domain anomaly resolution organization. RO, all domain. All domain means that these craft have been shown to operate optimally in all domains. Specifically, these craft can operate optimally with no compromise to their performance. They can do so in Earth's atmosphere. They can do so in the vacuum of space, and they can do so in the depth of the sea. All domain. These craft operates perfectly with no compromise in all of these domains: Earth's atmosphere, space, and the deep sea. Now, what's also interesting is, as I document in the book, Chariots of the Black Gods, we record the testimony of sound witnesses that have experienced not just the craft, but have experienced the pilots of the craft in all three domains, meaning that outside of the ship, outside of the protective material of the craft, in space, in Earth's atmosphere, and in the deep sea. And we discuss accounts of all three. Russian cosmonauts seeing the craft, but then also seeing pilots of the craft outside of the ship. Also, divers in the sea encountering so-called USOs, unidentified submerged objects. These craft in the deep sea, but divers encounter not just the craft, but the pilots outside of the craft in the deep sea. Now, what's common with the encounters of these pilots in space, in the deep sea, and in Earth's atmosphere? In all three cases, they have the silver suit, but they have something on their head. Their head is covered, but the suit, looking just like the material of the craft itself, the pilots separated from the craft, and all three of these domains have this silver suit on. That suggests to me strongly that the material of the suit is the same material of the craft itself. So all of the protective characteristics of the metal for the ship are also protective for the pilots themselves in all three of these domains. This is what I believe based on the evidence that I've looked at thus far. Now, the meeting and the plan. This is important. So you have the chronology. July 2nd, this baby plane starts making itself known in the Roswell area, makes its presence seen and felt in the Roswell area on July 2nd, flying around the skies, witnesses seeing it, reporting it. Around 11:15 on July 4th, evening, 75 miles northwest of Roswell proper, that ship explodes. Debris from that explosion drops down and covers the ranch managed by Mac Brazel. But the main body of that craft doesn't come down on Mac Brazel's ranch. It keeps going and comes down 40 miles at a spot 40 miles north of Roswell proper. And at the second site, the craft itself, or what's left of it, and the pilots are there and are discovered. Mac Brazel himself will make the trip to the second site and witness the craft and the bodies. By Tuesday, July 8th, a very important meeting takes place and a plan is concocted. The plan on how to deal with this earth-shattering event that just took place. On Tuesday, July 8th at 7:30 a.m., this meeting occurred at the Roswell Army Air Base in Roswell, attended by these 8 gentlemen here. Four key revelations come out of this meeting. One, it's revealed at this meeting that there are 2 crash sites involved. One 75 miles northwest of Roswell, and the other 40 miles north of Roswell. The attendees of the meeting, these gentlemen here, they were all briefed on both crash sites. 2, strange samples of the strange material from the wreckage was passed around the table to each of these attendees. They each handled the material and offered their opinion about it. No one was able to identify the material. 3, a cover-up plan was announced by the highest ranking military man in the room. That being Brigadier General Roger Ramey, who we saw earlier in that photo. The plan, the cover-up plan that was hatched at this meeting on July 8th is what's called in intelligence jargon a limited hangout. Attention will be focused on the less explosive site, the debris field on the J.B. Foster Ranch. While the truth of the more important site, 40 miles north, that truth will be concealed. Why is the second site more important than the first site and necessary to publicly deny? Because it's the second site that had the bodies. 4, as part of this limited hangout plan, let some truth hang out, get out in a limited fashion while concealing the bigger truth. As part of this limited hangout plan, the famous statement was dictated to Public Information Officer Lieutenant Colonel Walter Haut, which statement was distributed to the main local press, including the Roswell Daily Record. Roswell Army Airfield captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. Now, there was no flying saucer on the ranch. It was just debris. The flying saucer, if you will, was on the second site, 40 miles north of Roswell. But the cover story brought the craft to the safer site, Site 1, the Mac Brazel Ranch, while disappearing the bodies. No bodies are mentioned. That was the explosive secret of Roswell. That the bodies were the aim of the limited hangout operation, conceal the bodies. But this plan had 2 parts to it. The first part was the limited hangout, draw attention away from Site 2 by giving the public something explosive enough to keep their attention on Site 1. But there's also another part to the cover-up. It is the so-called scarecrow tactic. They released Brigadier General Ramey released this, in fact, dictated this story, claiming that a flying saucer was recovered on Site 1, all the while knowing that that was going to be followed up by a dismissal, a revelation that, in fact, it was no flying saucer at all. It was just a weather balloon. So the plan involved 2 parts: a limited hangout revelation, focus all attention on Site 1 so that nobody will consider Site 2 that has the biggest secret. Focus all attention on Site 1. Make the public think that a flying saucer was discovered at Site 1, was recovered. And then later in the day, actually the next day, revealed that it was no flying saucer at all. It was just the remains of a weather balloon. That's the plot that was hatched at the January 8th meeting and executed that day. But of course, it was cover up. The fact of the matter is, a spectacular craft, an unusual craft, did fall to earth at two sites in right outside of Roswell proper. Site 1, 75 miles northwest of Roswell, there's a debris field resulting from the midair explosion. And Site 2, 40 miles north of Roswell, the craft proper and the bodies landed. Now, the Air Force assembled a special radiological team of select scientists and dispatched them to the crash sites. The team reportedly included the Atomic Energy Commission's General Advisory Committee member, Dr. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb. It also included Operation Paperclip's Dr. Werner von Braun, and this special radiological team dispatched to the sites also reportedly included aerospace engineer and physicist Dr. Theodore von Karman. Reportedly, it was Oppenheimer and von Karman who examined the interior of the craft and its possible atomic engine. So Roswell is very real. The Roswell incident happened, and it was a spectacular incident. It is a myth that Roswell was only about a weather balloon. That was a cover up. And that cover up was hatched July 8th, that Tuesday, at that 7:30 meeting at the Roswell Army Air Base in Roswell. And the official position, the government's official position on Roswell still goes back to the plan hatched at that Tuesday, July 8th meeting. Now, let's get to this. Roswell myth number 2, the aliens. We'll wrap this up. There is in Roswell today an international UFO museum. And at this international UFO museum is at Roswell. The Roswell bodies, the bodies recovered from Site 2. Now, no, the bodies ended up at Wright Field Air Force Base in Ohio. And we go in great detail about that in the Roswell report and further in our book. At the International UFO Museum in Roswell, the Roswell bodies are depicted both as pale grays and as so-called dark grays, the gray aliens. So this has become the official image of the Roswell bodies. at the museum is also a panel depicting 28 types, over 28 types of aliens. None of the aliens depicted represent the true bodies of those that fell in the hands of the Roswell authorities on that day. This is all Roswell myth. However, the truth of Roswell is revealed by the testimony of several credible firsthand witnesses of the bodies. And they are described by these witnesses as human, not alien, human, as little men with Asiatic features and dark brown skin. The bodies actually look like, quote, ancient Chinese whose skin was black. These are the great witnesses that we owe very important testimony of how the Roswell bodies actually looked. From these witnesses, they each say that these were little people. They weren't green. Mac Brazel, the rancher. Sergeant Thomas Gonzalez, Squadron T of the 509th Bomb Squad. He says, quote, they were basically like human beings, only with eyes and heads slightly bigger. He said specifically and emphatically that they were not like the grays of the International UFO Museum, for example, today. That these bodies whom he witnessed firsthand were not the grays. They were basically human beings. Sergeant Melvin Brown of the 509th Bomb Group. He says they looked Asian. They could have passed for Chinese. They had slanted eyes, pretty faces. No one will look at the pale gray that they are displaying in Roswell as the Roswell body. No one would look at that face and say that's a pretty face. But Sergeant Melvin Brown of the 509th, he looked into the face of the bodies and he said that they looked Asian. They have pretty faces. They looked nice and friendly. They were only 4 feet tall. Lieutenant Dan Dreyer of the Roswell Fire Department, he saw the bodies and he described what he saw as a person, not an alien, a person with dark brown skin. Sergeant Frederick Benthal, the Air Force photographer, said they were dark complected. Robert Robbins, the technical sergeant at Roswell Army Airfield, he said they were people. He saw 3 bodies. He described them as people. They had pear-shaped heads and brown skin. Miriam Bush, the executive medical secretary of the Roswell Army Airfield Military Hospital, she said they had foreign bodies. They looked like ancient Chinese. Their skin was black. She didn't say alien bodies. She said foreign bodies. They looked like ancient Chinese. The skin was black. The actual bodies of Roswell looked, from the credible accounts given, look more like this. This is not a witness of Roswell. This is the description of a witness of a UFO pilot in 1978 in Malaria, Italy. He gave a detailed account of this Asiatic black pilot, of a UFO that he encountered, and what he described and was drawn based on his description. The witnesses to the Roswell bodies look closer to this, not the pale grays, as popularly depicted for Roswell and as is depicted in the Roswell UFO Museum. The pale gray on the left is Roswell myth. The black Asiatic on the right is closer to Roswell truth. Now, I close on this discussion right here. In 1995, a 17-minute film was injected into Roswell lore. I'm sure everybody who's tuned in tonight, the fact that you're tuned in to this broadcast means you have some level of interest in Roswell. And if you have some level of interest in Roswell, I'm sure you are familiar with the alien autopsy film. In 1995, the alien autopsy film aired in networks around the world, including Fox Television in the US and Channel 4 in the UK. This film became an instant sensation. It was sold to networks in 33 countries and was viewed by an estimated 2 billion persons. By now, I'm sure it's much more than that. The alien autopsy film cemented in the minds of millions, no doubt billions of people, that there were bodies recovered at Roswell and they were pale gray aliens. The claim, the story behind this 17-minute autopsy film, because the film depicts apparent medical personnel, for those who have not seen it, the 17 have not seen alien autopsy. It depicts 3 medical personnel conducting an autopsy on an alien figure. The claim, the background to this film, the claim is that the autopsy film was obtained in 1992 from a retired intelligence cameraman who claimed to have been tasked with filming the autopsy of the bodies at Roswell in 1947. He was at Roswell. This alleged cameraman in 1992 was 82 years old. So he claimed that in 1947, he was at Roswell and was commissioned to film the autopsy conducted there. And since 1947, while most of the footage he turned over to official sources, some of the footage he has had in his personal possession since then, in the 17-minute clip, is part of what he had, and he turned it over to those who would become the producers of the alien autopsy film. Now, it took 11 years for the truth of this autopsy film to be revealed. But by then, the image of the alien grays has sunk deep into the consciousness of the public. So if you believe that a ship crashed or fell to the ground in Roswell, and if you believe that bodies were recovered from that crash in Roswell, 10 out of 10, we say 9.7 out of 10 people believe that the bodies look like this. Look like the bodies or the body presented in alien autopsy. It took 11 years for the truth of this autopsy film to be revealed, but that truth was revealed in 2006, and there's a profoundly important story to this film that really ties the end of this presentation of mine back to the beginning of the presentation of mine. Remember, I began this presentation with the Wall Street Journal report from last month on the disinformation, the Pentagon disinformation that fueled America's UFO mythology. Remember, that's how I began this presentation. And this part, the ending of my presentation, ties right back to that beginning. In 2006, the truth of this sensational 17-minute autopsy film was revealed. The alien didn't come from Roswell. That alien came from North London. These are the men who brought us alien autopsy. Film distributors Ray Santilli and Gary Schofield, Royal Academy trained sculptor John Humphreys, and leading the production team was filmmaker Spiros Malleris. All four of these men have gone on record confessing, admitting the hoax and how they did it. The team leader, filmmaker Spiros Malleris, said, quote, because he was not only a filmmaker, but since childhood, he studied magic and he counted himself a magician. And he said, quote, regarding the film that he produced, Alien Autopsy, he said, as a magician, I wanted to create the biggest illusion ever performed on a global stage. And he feels that he succeeded. The 17-minute film is a simulated autopsy on a fabricated alien. The fake lab was constructed in the living room of an empty flat in Camden Town, North London. The alien dummy was constructed by John Humphreys, right here. It was constructed by John Humphreys and was made of plaster filled with animal innards, including sheep and pig brain matter. the organs of the alien that we see in the film. That's animal in ours. That when in the film, the scalp is peeled back and the autopsy focuses on the big brain of the alien that looks like two brains. Well, it is two brains put together, a sheep brain and a pig brain that was joined together. Alien autopsy is a proven, verifiable hoax. But what's important for our discussion, this alien hoax that cemented in the minds of billions, yea, millions, that the Roswell bodies looked like this, that they were non-human aliens. This admitted alien hoax is not simply a civilian executed hoax. It is, in fact, a government-spawned hoax, the product of a disinformation operation. 1995's alien autopsy film is the fruit of the same Pentagon disinformation operation that the Wall Street Journal just reported on last month. How do we know that, Brother Dr. Wesley? The CIA, before that alien was constructed by John Humphreys and appeared in that 17-minute clip. That specific alien was being shopped around by the CIA. We know this. For example, Johnson Takano, Japanese researcher and advisor of the Japanese government on UFO matters. He reveals that when the Japanese government requested UFO information from the US government, a CIA courier brought an autopsy film to Tokyo. Takano says that the alien in the 1995 film is the same alien in the film that a CIA courier brought to Japan when the Japanese government requested UFO info from the US. So when Takano saw the alien autopsy film in 1995, he said that the alien in that film is the same alien that was in the film that the CIA brought the Japanese government years ago. So the CIA was spreading this alien image already. Further, Dr. Hoang Young Chin of the National Research Center for Biotechnology in Taiwan. This is a very important, on the right, this is a very important scientist. Through his effort, his effort forced the Taiwanese government to recognize ufology as a scientific discipline. Dr. Chiang reports that prior to 1995, he had an official visit to CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. There, according to Dr. Ching, he was shown a film lasting about 5 hours. And in this film, an autopsy was performed on the exact same creature with the exact same surroundings that appeared in the Santilli film, the alien autopsy film. So we have a Japanese scientist and a Chinese scientist who independently affirmed that in very official circumstances, the CIA shared with them autopsy footage that had the exact same alien that appeared in the 1995 autopsy film. And very important to triangulate the evidence. Dr. Christopher Kit Green of the CIA. Kit Green worked for the CIA between 1969 and 1985. He at one time ran the CIA's Weird Desk, the section of the agency that deals with operations involving the paranormal, such as remote viewing. That was the one in charge of the Weird Desk, Dr. Kit Green. Green was also the senior division analyst with the Office of Scientific and Weapons Intelligence. He has been connected to the U.S. government's UFO programs. Thus, when Dr. Kit Green admits to something, such as CIA disinformation, we got to take that very, very seriously. And indeed, Dr. Kit Green was asked to weigh in on the alien. He's now retired. He was asked to weigh in on the alien autopsy footage. And Dr. Kit Green revealed something very explosive, that in the 80s, when he was trying to get security clearance to work on UFO projects, he never got that clearance. But in the process, he was brought into what he was made to believe were official briefings, the type of briefings that the Wall Street Journal revealed. He was brought into briefings that he was made to believe were real, but they were fake briefings. But in these briefings, he was given information about aliens, and in particular, Kit Green says, in those fake briefings of the 80s, he was shown pictures of aliens, the exact same alien that appeared in the 1995 alien autopsy film. So through the 80s, while the Pentagon was engaging in this disinformation operation targeting the American public, while the Pentagon was fueling alien conspiracy theories, while the Pentagon was trying to make the public believe in aliens. The Pentagon was using a particular type of alien that it was sending to persons with an interest in the UFO subject. The CIA sent it to governmental assets in Japan, requesting information on UFOs. They sent it to Chinese government or Taiwanese representatives, and even their own personnel. They shot this particular alien and made their own personnel believe that the program is real and the alien is real. Now, why would the CIA dupe its own big name CIA agent? Well, Dr. Kit Green explains. He said that was a standard, a classic intelligence operation employed by the CIA. He called it, the CIA's term for it is active measures. Active measures is an intelligence operation in which the CIA takes its own very best trained people and convinces them of a thing that is not true. Active measures. The CIA takes its best and brightest and deliberately convinces them of something that is not true. This is what Dr. Kit Green was subjected to during those briefings in the 80s, in which he was presented with images and autopsy reports of the same alien that appeared in the 1995 alien autopsy film. So in other words, the background of the sensational 1995 alien autopsy film is the CIA. Now, you might ask, what's the connection between the Pentagon's active measures operation that utilized a specific alien type? What's its connection with the fake alien autopsy film of Ray Santilli and the rest that used the same alien? What's the connection? How do we go from the CIA's active measures operation or the Pentagon's disinformation operation of the 80s? How do we get from that to the alien autopsy film of 1995? What's the intersection? Well, apparently, this man is the intersection. Allegedly, Jack Detmar Barrett is the connection. Jack Detmar Barrett reportedly was a military cameraman between 1942 and 1952, and he was appointed to United States Army Air Force Intelligence Unit A2. This is the man that provided the initial footage to Ray Santilli. He provided the footage to Ray Santilli. Ray Santilli and the boys recreated in their North London fabricated laboratory, recreated the scene from the footage that Jack Detmar Barrett allegedly provided to Ray Santilli. Jack Barrett was 82 years at the time, but had been a long time intelligence asset. So he, no doubt, is the nexus between the intelligence operation utilizing that alien, targeting the public. Jack Barrett reportedly is how that disinformation piece, that disinformation alien, made it into the hands of Ray Santilli, and from there, Cyprus Malaris and that whole team, and we get alien autopsy, and the rest is history. So the alien autopsy film, family, through the alien autopsy film, the U.S. government made great traction in planting in the minds of billions of people around the world that aliens are real, that aliens look like this, and that aliens were recovered in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, and those aliens look like this. All of that is myth. But more than that, all of that is government disinformation. It was not an extraterrestrial craft that accidentally crashed in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. That was a deliberate divine self-revelation in 1947. Allah, in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, the architect and the commander of these ships, gifted the enemy one of the baby planes and its pilots to study. And when those Black Asiatic bodies fell into the hands of the Roswell Air Force Base personnel, what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to the FBI in 1942 came crashingly home to them. They are witnessing firsthand, face-to-face, the truth of what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad had told them. This is the significance of the Roswell incident. That was a divine explosion on the 4th of July, 1947. I pray that this was helpful, opening the files with Dr. Wesley Muhammad. Stay tuned for our next episode, our next subject, our next discussion. That's it. I'm done. I won't hold you all any longer. Assalamu alaikum, family.